Good afternoon, Marvel Rivals community. My name is KarQ. We are back with another set of hot takes for the game right now. I've been away. Sorry. I know I said in the last episode or 2 episodes ago that I'd be more consistent, but I ended up traveling back to China for an event for the other game. But here we are. Let's see what we got here. Hot take: neutral game is non-existent in this game, and therefore Rivals players lack the concept of ultimate economy. I would actually agree with this. I think the neutral, I've said this over and over again in all these takes videos, but obviously if they're new viewers, the neutral game is like the phase where ultimates are not being flung out. And I've always said if you slow down the pace of ultimates, like the rate people charge it up, let the other kits shine a little bit, the neutral game and actually tracking what ultimates may or may not be coming up would actually be a big strategic layer added for the players. But as it stands, most people just track maybe support ultimates at best, just when did they use it last fight. And there's gonna be cases where like, oh, their Luna ulted last fight, okay, now we can use XYZ. But then there's some cases where the fights last so long that she ends up building a second one. So as it stands, so I take it back. I wouldn't say neutral game is non-existent, but it's just not as prevalent compared to the other titles, aka Overwatch. I'm not saying it needs to be this way. I don't want to like constantly compare the games and say what one game does better compared to the others. But like objectively speaking, neutral game is less frequent, less existent, or doesn't exist in the same capacity as Overwatch. And therefore a lot of new Rivals players who never touched Overwatch don't really ultimate track the way that Overwatch players who moved on to Rivals would. So in that case, here's my advice to the players who just started hero shooters with Marvel Rivals. Try your best to not only track, support ultimates, but try to track tank ultimates and DPS ultimates. I would say in that order, because it usually feels like support ultimates are the most important to track, then the tanks, then the DPS ones. Like, I'm not going to track Squirrel Girl's ultimate because she's going to build it every fight at this point. You know what I mean? But making sure you're aware of when Strange is going to ult is very important when you play like, Invisible Woman, so you actually have your boop ready. So when you see him fly up, you know it's coming this fight, or you don't see him right away when you round a corner, he might be coming in from the sky. And anticipating that as part of ultimate tracking is a big part of getting better at the game and is what holds a lot of people back from improving here. Anyways, next take. Jeff was completely fine, and the rework overnerfed him so hard that Jeff is now the most boring hero in the game. He can only heal bot, and he does no meaningful damage. He can't escape anymore. His secondary fire is just trying to push people off of you if you're getting dove. He has no interesting or powerful plays he can make outside of his ultimate. He's inferior to Rocket in every way. I would actually agree with the first part here if I unpack it one statement at a time. I thought Jeff was completely fine. I know they wanted to move away from the DPS Jeff style, but once they removed the Luna Snow Icicle team up, he was like fine in a sense where if you wanted to nerf that and increase his healing, sure, to kind of please both players. But I thought it was kind of cool to have a support or a strategist do some funky stuff that isn't so traditional and homogenous with everybody else. And now that they kind of neutered his identity to also be another healer with the team, but he also does that job worse, he kind of just feels like in an awkward place. So I kind of miss the old Jeff, if you will, as well. Now, saying he's inferior to Rocket in every way, not necessarily. He does possess more damage and poke compared to Rocket. Obviously, Rocket is pretty lethal at really close range, but Jeff can play at those medium to long ranges and still apply pressure, especially down like long chokes with the AoE heal stream. A little bit different, but I wouldn't say he's inferior to Rocket in every way, but yeah. I do think I would go back to the old Jeff if I had a choice. Mild take, maybe? We do not need a full-on flying tank. I keep seeing people say, we need a flying tank to help deal with flyers. But what do you think is going to join the flyers? We can barely handle Human Torch and Storm, so having a 600 HP Vanguard flyer alongside them would not be fun. We need tanks with anti-air capabilities so they can pressure them, and if they really want the tank to fly, put it on a resource meter or a cooldown like Doctor Strange. I think eventually we might run into the whole flying tank thing because we have the Marvel universe, and I'm pretty sure you can turn one of these flying superheroes in the comics into a tank archetype. But that being said, I agree. Having some anti-air capabilities is nice. I like how they have it for the Thing now and the Hulk, where you can actually bring flyers down, so the tanks actually have some sort of way to pressure them. But if not, ways to mitigate their pressure and damage is always appreciated. But at this current time, I agree, we don't need a flying tank yet, but when the hero pool for Marvel Rivals continues to increase and we have 80 to 90 heroes, I think it's inevitable. I do think it's inevitable, but hopefully when we have a 600 HP flying tank, we have more options to deal with it with the rest of the roster. Hot take, ever since they turned Iron Fist into a brawl-dive hybrid, his character lost his identity. He's constantly changed and it seems like the devs don't know what to do with him. They should just revert him back into a pure dive character. I disagree. I think the change they wanted to like make Wolverine not just the only hero that does percentage damage, and they kind of changed it so he's not just a pure dive in the backline, and they made him viable to actually punch away tanks. I think having both options is good, but I do think his output against squishier targets is slightly nerfed compared to his, older state. But that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with a hybrid style character. I feel like having a character that's hard into one identity is fine, but also having characters that are kind of can do both, hybrids, are also fine in the game. I don't like labeling heroes into strict archetypes, and heroes that can do both are kind of appreciated, and especially in a 6v6 game. He is constantly being changed, but the only thing I would probably change from him now is you could maybe up it against the squishies, but then again, I play supports or strategists. I don't want to deal with an Iron Fist, and he still feels pretty annoying to deal with when he jumps the backline. So I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I don't think they need to change Iron Fist. It just feels like Iron Fist players kind of miss diving backlines, and it feels like they have to dive tanks. But if you do your job right, you can be an absolute menace in enemy backline still. So yeah, I take it back. Fuck Iron Fist players. I'm kidding, by the way. Oh, okay. Something to counteract the first take. A hot take, I've been seeing the term neutral used to describe dry fights more often in the Marvel Rivals community. There's nothing inherently wrong with this. It just feels kind of weird to me as a fighting game player because that is not at all what neutral means in the FGC. I mean, I also play fighting games. I play Street Fighter. My interpretation of neutral in the fighting games is kind of like where you're not hard comboing and trying to bring people down. Okay, you're kind of fishing for a mistake or a whiff punish and stuff like that, right? You're kind of playing footsies and playing the neutral game. And that's kind of sort of what neutral is in Marvel Rivals. Maybe the overarching community uses it to describe a dry fight where no ultimates are coming out because you don't really have to like fish for a mistake. But honestly, neutral in the game is kind of similar in Marvel Rivals and in Overwatch and other hero shooters where you're kind of just poking back and forth. Obviously, if nobody is in a really big punishing state, then eventually it is a dry fight and you wait until a big ultimate comes online and then, all hell is loose, right? For the most part, a lot of people in Marvel Rivals actually tend to play front to back. So then it ends up not being anything that you can really punish. There's no punish counter. When you play in higher elo lobbies, there are people who are going to take off angles, and the people who have, bad timing and they position incorrectly and they get caught out. Like that's a big thing. You're looking for a punish there. Like you're playing neutral up until that point, up until somebody either A, gets punished and caught out of position, or B, ultimates come online and big abilities start flying in. So I don't know. I disagree. I don't think there was anything wrong with how people use neutral in this game at all. You know what I mean? Next take, the three major healing ults being Luna, Invisible Woman, and Cloak and Dagger aren't pausing the game for 10 seconds. People just don't know how to play against them. It's not, yeah. I mean, the easy answer is it's pausing the game for your average player who doesn't have target focus. But actually, you're not wrong though. In higher elo lobbies, there are people who know how to burst through it. Sometimes when you do big ultimates like that, this is where you tempo with like your own damage boosting ultimate, like your Luna ults as well when they ult, but you switch to damage boost and you do a big burst combo, or you have a rocket ultimate, or you have really good focus fire, or you have displacement abilities to push them outside. For example, Emma Frost can pick somebody up and kick them outside of an ultimate. Kick them outside the Invisible Woman ultimate. Blade can anti them or reduce them now. There actually are more options to burst through, and I do wish the Rivals community would look more into ways to punish through ultimates. Like you're right, it's not the end all be all when they use big defensive ultimates. Like look for your hero, look at your team composition, and actually think, are there ways to kind of break through it? Easy answers are Iron Man, like one hero can do it, but even without big bursts like that, as long as 2 or 3 people are looking at the same target, you can absolutely kill them at the same time. Lock somebody in place and a back-to-back headshot from Hela goes a long way for burst, you know what I mean? Hot take, all the way up to GM, banning Cloak and Dagger makes a huge increase in the enjoyability of the game. Seriously, try it. This is a take from maybe a DPS player that gets annoyed by Cloak and Dagger players that are able to just press their ultimate and survive against their stuff. I mean, sure, but that's from your perspective. I mean, if you're a Cloak and Dagger main, then banning Cloak and Dagger would not increase your enjoyability, right? But I see your point. It's all about your perspective. Here's a good hot take. Stats generally do tell the full story. Ooh, okay. There's a common statement among various coaches and analysts that say stats don't matter and you shouldn't pay attention to them. But in my opinion, this is almost always bad advice. The reason for giving this advice is that it is possible to concoct a scenario where the stats could be misleading, but these are always fringe or border cases that rarely occur in real gameplay, and in almost all cases, the stats will show you what's going on. For example, if you're 2 DPSs or 1 1-5 and 15-3, I can say without any reservation that that second DPS player is playing way better. You might think, well, what if that 1-5 DPS player had a clutch stall on the point that allowed their team to recontest? But alternatively, they could have just been less bad and the team probably wouldn't have been in that situation of needing to stall in the first place. If your greatest contribution to the match is that you stalled for a few seconds and died so that your team could come in and win the fight without you, you probably needed to be playing a different character. This is why you should always be paying attention to your stats. If your stats are terrible, it probably means you're getting countered, and you should take that feedback to adjust your play rather than assuming the scoreboard is irrelevant and you're secretly still contributing a lot despite always being dead and never killing anyone. Okay, so here's the thing where various coaches and analysts say stats shouldn't matter, don't matter, and you don't pay attention to them. This is just like quick advice for those who really are scoreboard Sallies or stat board Sallies and really get tilted from the stat board and really like put all their eggs in one basket and accept the scoreboard is like the one-all be-all of like how you've played and how your team has played. It's mostly for those to kind of like stop them from tilting. But anybody with, you know, who thinks a little bit harder, who uses a little bit of critical thinking, understands there's nuance and there's context you can take away from the scoreboard, like you said, that can give you a lot of valuable information. So I agree. I don't actually parrot that narrative that stats don't matter. They matter to some capacity to help you form better choices, for sure. But the saying stats don't matter is to just help someone's mental state. That's my take, at least whenever I hear someone say that. Like if someone's playing poorly, they're already like in a bad mindset. They're tilted. So like a coach would be like, stats don't matter, like play your best. You know, it's kind of a way to kind of like let them focus on the game rather than focusing on their current stats and what their team thinks of them for playing poorly. So everything you mentioned is correct. Like the what if part, you can objectively say that other player is playing better than the other DPS. And again, you can extract a lot of valuable info. You wouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. How can you adapt now? You could definitely use the scoreboard in meaningful ways. That's my take on scoreboard, and I feel like everybody's would agree with my take in response to that, right? Think about it. If you don't, then you know, I don't know what to say. Hot take, overtuned healer ultimates are a necessary evil in this game. The amount of random damage this game has is insane. You can literally die to Namor Squid, Squirrel Girl spam, Scarlet Witch holding right click with the team up, Moon Knight spam, Phoenix spam, etc. before even walking out of the spawn. DPS ults are also very powerful in this game and need to be checked by healer ults, or we will be playing Spawn Simulator every time a Star-Lord, Groot, Strange, Psylocke, Blade, ults, etc. Every ult in the game is overtuned, not just supports. But PS, Luna ult needs a nerf too. I think for their raw power, yes, but you can still lower the duration. Because most of those DPS ults you mentioned do not last quite as long as the support ultimates. That's just my take. I do not see any reason why Cloak and Dagger's ultimate needs to last. Wasn't it 5 seconds per dash? So like 20 seconds total. Luna's being 12 seconds is kind of insane. The raw healing amount is actually, you're right, I actually would say it's fine in the context of like, you know, some of the DPS ultimates have pretty high numbers too, and you can still burst through that sort of healing. It could be toned down a little bit. Invisible Woman's is a good example at 165 HP per second, while Luna's is like 250. Like 165 is a lot more doable. It's a pretty strong support ultimate from Invisible Woman. The strength is obviously your team is invisible and not so much the raw healing, but the raw healing is also like so good that a lot of people just tend to ignore it anyways. You can lower the duration. I think Invisible Woman's is at a healthy one. I think it's 8 seconds or maybe 10 seconds. Luna's is 12, Cloak and Dagger's is 20. A little too outrageous at the long end. Keep it like 10 seconds max or even just 8 seconds and we're good. Zenyatta in Overwatch is 6 seconds, by the way, for context. And people have thought his is one of the best support ultimates in that game. And that pales in comparison to what these support ultimates can do in Rivals. Different games, but like, just for context, if you played Overwatch, Zenyatta's feeling like 6 seconds used to feel like an eternity until we've had Marvel Rivals to compare it to. Anyways, I think that's it for the hot takes this week. Leave some more fresh ones for Season 3.5, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.